Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to walk you through the latest data on the steel sector. Here's my agenda. I'll talk a bit about myself. I'll talk a lot around the stats and just some of my insight as well. Here's a bit of background about myself. I've been in business accounting area since 1990, so well over 35 years experience. I've worked balance between financial reporting and analysis to roles supporting how best to drive better decisions based on data. So if we look at the overall global steels production, and this information just came out at the time of this video on September 24, and basically steel overall production for August is down, and it makes sense because we are seeing the tendency, the impact of the Trump tariffs on the overall steel, as well as global and domestic demand is down a bit. And if you look at key countries like China, where a lot of the steel is produced, and just the overall consumption in China and other countries, there's been a bit of a struggle. But there is some good news here, because if you look at the geographically, North America as well as Africa and the Middle East saw a bump in steel production. And if we look at by country, the U.S. basically is up a little bit year over year, and it just gives you some ideas of the challenges facing the steel sector globally. This is the U.S. steel production, and I do this chart every month because that's when the data comes available. This gives you some insight in terms of where we are on a weekly perspective. But if you look at where steel was, is if you go back to as late as 15 years ago, U.S. steel production is down nearly 20% of where it was in 2008. And there's a reason why that's happened. There's issues with energy, there's issues with efficiency. But that being said, Donald Trump's made a clear promise to rebuild the steel sector, and it'll be interesting to see how that happens over the next little bit, because I am seeing a bit of an uptick there. But I'm also seeing key investments being made by key companies like Cleveland Cliffs, Nucor, Steel Dynamics in their operations, whether that's efficiency areas or whether that's basically expanding their capacity. This is Canada. Now, in the past, I used to be able to get statistics on steel, raw steel, but those now require a membership. But what I do is I just use manufacturing sales. And the steel sector in Canada, which is predominantly located in Montreal and the Ontario region, basically Hamilton area, has seen struggles due to the impact of the tariffs from Trump. And it's something to bear in mind. RBC called that out as well, and they're impacting scaling back of operations. And it's something to bear in mind in terms of when you're looking forward on the steel stats. I picked Australia. Australia has, I think, one steel plant, but the government's getting involved in trying to protect that local steel industry as well as the smelting side in terms of moving it green. So there's a lot of debate about the contribution of government into this. There's some money being thrown around $2 billion as part of moving things to greener options in terms of aluminum smelting and steel production. Now, this is a good chart here because there's been a lot of pivoting back on green steel projects just because of the cost of capital and the viability of this just are not economically feasible right now. And this basically is showing you why companies like Peabody Energy, Alpha Metallurgical Resources are starting to see a little bit stronger benefit to the EBITDA just because of the fact that they're seeing less appetite to move to green steel. This gives you a good example of one company. It's not the only company, but more and more steel companies are embracing AI as part of the overall demand forecasting, energy management, all this in terms of managing the whole supply chain from the old saying soup to nuts. This company, Russo, is showing you how they're basically trying to better get control of their operational costs as well as their overall demand for their products. Here's some additional links. This gives you a little bit what I do monthly on bonds, on stocks. I also have written a lot of blogs around different areas based on experience because I'm a believer in giving knowledge out. And this is how you can reach out to me as well. This is my Outlook account.